All right, everybody, welcome back. So today we're gonna be talking about maximizing your money, right? How do you have all the different rifle setups you want, from an up close and personal short barreled setup all the way through an 18-inch SPR setup and not break the bank? It's not a really big secret that all you do is have one really good lower and then outfit several different upper receivers the way you need them for the performance type you are going for that day. And you can save a lot of money doing that, because generally a lower receiver is going to cost you anywhere from probably $300 to $600 or more, depending on the brand and how you've optioned that thing out. So specifically for this reason, I wanted to kind of start testing different full upper receiver groups from companies, because most people just aren't going to build their own. They're going to rely on a company that's going to have that thing built for them and have it be pretty close to exactly how they want it. So starting today, we were going to go over the 1395 setup here from Rosco, which is a full upper receiver group, and the 18-inch SPR setup right here. So very different. And I really do love the 13.9 because it's about as short as you can go, a 13.7, 13.9, and then pin and weld a muzzle device and still be able to use a suppressor on there like I did on that one, which is the Griffin Dual Lock 7. And then on the 18-inch version, I've got that Griffin Dual Lock SPR, which sleeves way back over the barrel, gives you a little bit more can without extending the length so far. But as you can see, very different setups. Now, if you don't know who Rosco is, they've actually got a pretty good reputation in the industry. They make a ton of bolt and carrier groups, barrels, a bunch of different parts, and they actually white label a lot of parts for other companies. Now, if you don't know what white labeling is, that is when a company makes a part and then puts another company's logo on it, or makes that part for another company and then that company puts their logo on it and sells it as their own or under their brand. That's actually more common than you would think in the industry. And Rosco is one of those companies that is pretty well known in the industry for white labeling a lot of barrels, bolts, carrier groups, and other parts for other companies, some of which you probably know. Now, I have had several Rosco barrels and parts over the past probably 5 to 6 years, from 18-inch to shorter 13.9 style builds, all of which have performed great. Now, Rosco has made several changes in the past few years, not only to their tooling, their gas system offerings, but also the design, gas porting, and several different things when it comes to their complete upper receiver group. So really the big changes here are they're going to have a different profile that's offered now as compared to the standard government profile, M4 profile, whatever it is. And they're going to fall in line with a more heavy, continuous tapered barrel. And those are just better in my opinion. There are a lot of benefits to a heavier profile barrel that has a more continuous taper to it. You're gonna have a little bit more rigidity when it comes to the barrel whip. You're gonna have a little bit better time dealing with heat. And generally you will see a better accuracy consistently through the heat cycle on these barrels. Now, they are very popular when it comes to their kind of collaboration barrels, whether it was Greenline Tactical, Barrel and Hatchet, or Aaron over at Sage Dynamics. They all kind of seem to have that continuous canine profile is what they call it. They've also kind of retooled, like I said, so they've got a little bit more consistency in their rifling, their barreling, and their gas porting. So from my experience, Rosco has had some very good gas porting. It's like right there in the middle. In fact, kind of on the lesser edge of the middle of the gassing, which is where I like to be, because whether you're suppressed or unsuppressed, you're still going to be like right there and not have an over gas situation, even if you're running a high flow through style can. Now, some of the other things that they have changed is the gas system lengths. They not only have your carbine for your short stuff, but they've also got your standard mid length, which is kind of a newer, I guess you could say, more accepted gas system. Then they have the intermediate, then they have the rifle length. So mid-length has come a long way. It's become much more reliable than it initially was, and they seem to have that down. Now, when you get to a mid-length, intermediate, and a rifle length, they're obviously far softer shooting. They're going to be much easier on all the parts in there, and that is a good thing. Another thing that Rosco has changed when it comes to their complete upper receiver groups is the style of the rail. So instead of the traditional rail with the barrel nut lockup design, they've gone to a wedge lock system, which is pretty common out there and well proven now. It's used by companies like Triarc, Zev, and several others. And then one of the last big changes is all of their upper receivers are thermal fit. So what that means, as your barrel extension mates into the upper receiver, you have to heat that area to get the barrel extension in there, and that is to give you a very consistent tight fit. Other companies often rely on like some kind of compound that expands in there to really lock up that barrel extension into the upper receiver. While Rosco has a little bit of a tighter tolerance, so you can thermal fit those things and make sure you get that ultimate in tightness, which is going to make a difference in the small amount when it comes to accuracy downrange, especially when you're going 500, 600, 700 yards with that 18-inch SPR. And since we're talking about having fun out there on the range, got to give a big shout to HRT Tactical. They keep the channel flush with all of the gear when it comes to plate carriers, the arc belt system, some of the harnesses that I wear out there. They just make great stuff. It's very well designed. It's good quality stuff. And since they are all end users, it's generally a lot more thought out than some other kit out there in the market. So if you are looking for gear, check out HRT Tactical. All right, let's get into the 13.9 first off right there. And like I said, this is one of my favorite lengths because it's about as short as you can go while pin welding a muzzle device and still get the 16 length overall to keep you completely legal and not have to pay that ridiculous $200 tax stamp for an SBR. So this barrel in here is the continuous like canine taper barrel. And this one is one of their collab barrels with Greenline Tactical. So there's a lot of good stuff going on in here. This 13.9 Greenline barrel from Rosco is chambered in 5.56. The barrel is made of 416R stainless steel, and it is treated in nitride. Now, if you don't know what nitride treatment is, that's not a coating, it's actually a treatment for the metal. And what that stuff does is it makes the metal extremely hard, specifically inside the barrel for the lands and grooves and the rifling. Now, what that's going to do is extend the life of the barrel and give you that peak accuracy a little bit longer than if it was untreated. The barrel has a 1 in 7 twist rate, a mid-length gas system, which is optimized for suppressed and unsuppressed usage. It has their version 2 gas block. It will come with an A2 flash hider, but obviously I changed it out for the Griffin armament so I could run their dual lock suppressor on there. The upper is 7075 forged T6 aluminum with that thermal fit design like I discussed. The wedge lock rail is 12.6 inches long. It has a nice clean look all the way out to the end of that muzzle. There is anti-rotation built into it. There's actually a center pin that goes from the rail into the upper receiver to ensure that it's not going to shift or deviate one direction on the other. Now, when it comes down to the bolt and carrier group, this is extremely important because this is the heart of your system. When it comes to the specs on the bolt and carrier group from Rosco, it is made of 8620 as far as the carrier goes. The gas key is made of 4130 steel, and it is attached with grade 8 hardware and properly staked. So if you don't know what grade 8 hardware is, those are the strength of bolts and fasteners they use for like super high horsepower race engines so the heads don't go blowing off those things. The cam pin on there is 4340. The firing pin is 8740 steel covered in that hard chrome coating that you are used to seeing with pretty much every firing pin out there. The bolt itself is made of 9310 that is properly heat treated, magnetic particle inspected, and high pressure tested. The extractor is 4340 steel and the ejector is S7 tool steel. Now, the charging handle option from Rosco is actually a forward controlled design charging handle with the Rosco logo on it. I didn't know how I felt about this when I first got this thing in, but after using it, feeling the lockup and kind of the way it sits on the rifle, I think I'm actually going to use this on some future builds. Suppressed or unsuppressed, the 13.9 ran flawlessly. I didn't have any problem with any of the ammunition I tried, everything from 55 grain all the way up through the 77 grain, whether it was basic ball or soft point self-defense style ammunition. When it comes to accuracy, because I know somebody is going to ask, even though that is a 13.9, I'll show the picture of my final zero, which I did standing, resting on a tripod from 50 yards away. And you'll see that is a pretty tight, consistent group, especially for just running a red dot without a magnifier. Now, speaking of what's up top here, that's the new Ride-On X3 Tactics. So actually that is a pretty solid red dot. This was my first experience with the 3 Tactics ARD. I have to say it's pretty clear, it's pretty crisp. It has sacrificial lenses, comes with a lower 1/3 QD mount, which is definitely nice. Great brightness settings for how extremely bright it is in the Arizona sun. And these things can be had for like under 200 bucks right now, which is a pretty solid price. And if you guys are interested in anything you see here today, I'll have a build list. It'll be the first link in the description down below. And if you watch this on TV, I'll put a QR code up here so you can scan it, check that stuff out while you're watching the video. But ultimately, everything we talk about, I'll have it linked over there so you can do all of your own research. And all of that is made possible by Brownells. They've been a huge supporter of the channel, helping make sure that I have everything fed with ammo, and of course, giving me the ability to help maintain and keep up that website so you guys can check all of that stuff out. And there's probably some ways over there to not pay full galactic credits, especially if you're thinking about Brownells. All right, now for my scoped carbine people, let's talk about that 18-inch setup right there with that heavy kind of SPR profile barrel in there. Now this one is obviously quite a bit different because it's 18 inches long. So this one is going to be made of that raw 416R stainless steel. Is going to be chambered in 223 Wild instead of 556. It will have that 1-in-7 twist rate. It is a rifle length gas system, and this thing is exceptionally soft when it comes to the recoil here. And you'll notice I do have another dual lock cannon there from Griffin Armament. The cool thing is though, is this one actually sleeves over the barrel, so you get a little bit more can without extending the profile of that setup too much. Really digging what Griffin is doing, especially with their dual lock setups and a PSR style suppressor like that. Pretty cool, kind of reminiscent of the old Ops Inc. Mark 12 setup, which I am definitely a fan of. Now I will throw up some accuracy groupings here. These were all shot from the prone at 100 yards with the suppressor and everything on there. And I ran 65 grain Atlanta Arms, I ran 77 grain 262, I ran 77 grain Badlands, and also 85 grain Badlands. Now I'm still breaking this barrel in. It's got right around 100 rounds on it, which is definitely not a lot, but let's remember, this is not meant for machine gun burn downs. This is a 416R raw barrel that's meant for accuracy and consistent accuracy. So you don't want to heat this thing up like crazy and just burn it down time and time again, right? Now, generally from my experience, when it comes to a barrel like this, usually about 150 to 300 rounds, somewhere in there, you start to reach that peak accuracy. You maintain really good accuracy for several thousand rounds, and then at some point you'll see the accuracy kind of start to open up, which is what every barrel does. But 416R will generally do that somewhere around 8,000-ish rounds, depending on the barrel, how you've treated it, what type of ammunition you're going through. But ultimately, let's remember, right? So most people are not going to be putting hundreds of rounds downrange every day when it comes to their SPR. In fact, unless you're in a pretty cool class, you go out there with 100 rounds because that ammunition is probably like $150 a shot right now with some really good stuff. That's a pretty good fun day out there. Now, if you go a couple hundred, maybe 300 rounds or something, that's probably a pretty awesome day, maybe a really good class. But ultimately that's probably where you're going to be ending it unless you've just got really deep pockets. Now, when it comes to the bolt and carrier and all the other parts on this upper receiver, it's going to be the same as the 13.9, minus the rail is a couple of inches longer, obviously, but bolt carrier, charging handle, it's all going to be that same good stuff with all the same materials and testing that we talked about on the 13.9. And a big thanks to my boys over at Badlands for supplying that spicy ammunition to test this thing out. It's always a pleasure to shoot that stuff. All right, so how do I feel about these things after running them? What are the price points and would I actually recommend these things? So having run Rosco stuff for a few years now and now running these, I would have zero problems telling people these are good to go, whether you want a 13.9 or whether you want a longer 18 for an SPR. They've given me the performance that I pretty much would expect. They are at a price point that I can absolutely stomach. I think the 13.9 is like $595, and then the 18-inch with that purebred, kind of their premium barrel, is $630, and then the bolt is like, I think 139, and then the charging handle is 120. So when you think about it, those upper receiver groups come in about 150, maybe 200 bucks less than something like a BCM, which I think is kind of right where they should be. But ultimately they are going to perform. They're made out of very good materials. They've got the right testing through them. They've got a really solid rail lockup. And overall, I don't think they're going to let you down. So you can buy it as a complete ready to roll setup, or you can buy it as just the receiver group, put your own bolt and charging handle in there, whatever you want to do. And now, since nobody gets a free pass, were there any issues? Is there anything that I came up with that maybe I think could be just a little bit better? And there are two things that I kind of thought about when it came to running these rifles. The first of which being the rail, okay? Just a me thing, I like 7-sided M-LOK, right? And I know these larger sections here that are opened up are meant for venting and all that. There is some N-LOK up here in these 45 offsets, but the 3, 6, and 9, I really like it all the way around all 7 sides. One of the reasons for that is when you get these bigger venting holes like this, when I grab, sometimes I manage to stick my pinky right in there like that and fry it on the barrel. So that may be just a me thing. Let me know if it's happened to you, but that's why I kind of like these 7 sides of M-LOK. And it helps me when I'm trying to put all the little attachments on there and stuff, because there are times where you need that M-LOK section like right here. If you don't have it, it's kind of a pain in the butt. The only other thing that I noticed, if you look at the upper and lower here, is the anodizing, right? So you'll see that the Rosco anodizing is far shinier than probably what you are typically used to seeing when it comes to an AR rifle. Usually anodizing is fairly matte. Now, I noticed this, a few people noticed this out on the range, and it's really an aesthetic thing. And let's be honest, most people are going to probably spray paint or rattle can this thing, whatever color pattern they want. But it seems to me when people see a shinier version of anodizing, for some odd reason, they start to think cheap. So I'm not saying that it is. It's a really good setup. They've team marked it all. It's good to go. But I would like to see that matte anodizing on there, because I think the shininess of it could give some people the wrong opinion and they might not go for it when it's probably something that is worth looking at for them. Now, I know that is completely aesthetic, but it's just something that popped in my mind, and I know other people were thinking that, because that is exactly what they told me out there on the range. So that is all I've got for you today. Keep doing it on the range. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. I will see you all on the next one.